Hello, this is an updated list of Apple Arcade games with the best graphics. FANTASIAN, in my opinion, is the best looking game on Apple Arcade. It uses real handcrafted dioramas for its world. Every location feels alive, like stepping into a miniature masterpiece. I also find it impressive that the game supports 60 FPS on literally everything, all the way back to an iPhone 6S or iPad Air 2. Pretty incredible if you think about it. Mistwalker had to compress a 500GB masterpiece to a mobile-friendly 4GB version with automated scripts and tools thanks to Unity. I remember playing Oceanhorn 2 way back in 2019 on my iPhone XR and being blown away that you can have a full console experience on mobile. Mobile gaming has come a long way since then, but it was impressive for the time. Unlike the first game, which had its own engine, Oceanhorn 2 made the switch to Unreal Engine 4. This allowed Corn, Fox and Bros to more easily switch to a third-person perspective. It supports around 1080p and high graphics quality by default on modern iPhone and iPads and Apple TV 4K models, and you can enable a 60 FPS mode on devices back to an iPhone XR. Gear.Club Stradale offers real supercars to try, and players can race across real-world locations. Don't expect a AAA racing experience like Grid Legends on the App Store. It's just a fun arcade racer. The game offers 3 video modes. Quality runs the game at higher video settings, but caps the frame rate to 30. Performance provides up to 60 FPS, but with lower image quality. Energy saving prioritizes battery life by lowering image quality further with a 30 FPS cap. All modes provide about 1080p, upscaled to native resolution on mobile and Apple TV. On Mac, you can choose different quality options, enable or disable VSync, and play up to 300 FPS on high refresh rate monitors. NBA 2K25 Arcade Edition probably offers the most realistic graphics on the service. Yes, it's still not on par with the PC and console version, but it's really not far off. I think it uses a custom version of Unreal Engine 4 on Apple Arcade. This allows it to run at the best graphics possible on every device. Most iPhone and iPads support 60 FPS too. Even my iPhone 8 Plus can easily play at 60 FPS. Devices with an A14 Bionic chip or later have support for ultra-high video settings too, and provide native resolution support. Some will argue that Disney Dreamlight Valley is just a cartoony kids game. While I disagree with that statement, I also believe the world here is super detailed and shows off the magical world of Disney. I don't recommend playing it on mobile. The frame pacing on mobile is disgusting too, and 30 FPS on everything. It's just a pretty bad port. Even the Apple TV 4K 3rd Gen has issues. I suggest playing the game on Mac. It runs much better, and you can choose a manual resolution and play at high graphics quality. Beyond a Steel Sky is a massive adventure set in an AI-driven future. Similar to Oceanhorn 2, I was blown away that I could play something like this on mobile back in 2020. The cel-shaded graphics look fantastic and give it a unique look. The game uses motion capture. It's not always perfect, but when it works here, it has the ability to bring life to the ridiculous character dialogue. The mobile port is locked to running at low graphics and 30 FPS on everything. This is still a big game, even in 2025, so I understand why it was limited on mobile. But if you have a Mac, I suggest playing it there, as you can choose a manual resolution and more advanced video settings. Even on Mac, it's still pretty demanding actually. Trials of Mana is a full 3D remake of the 3rd game in the Mana series. The entire game has been fully rebuilt from the ground up with modern 3D graphics in Unreal Engine 4. Unlike the original paid App Store version, the Apple Arcade version has full controller support, which is awesome. The game runs at about 600 to 800p on modern iPhones and a little over 1080p on modern iPads. It does have a 30 FPS cap, which is a little annoying for a fighting game, so I hope Square Enix consider adding a 60 FPS toggle in the future. Please note, Trials of Mana is only available on iPhone and iPad. In the Gardens Between, you dive into a single-player adventure puzzle game about memories, friendship, and time. On Apple Arcade, the game matches the current-gen version on PS5. It's also one of the few games on the service or mobile with controller rumble support and adaptive trigger support and full keyboard support on iPad. It's got a lot. The game runs at native resolution on devices back to the iPhone 11 and supports 60 FPS all the way back to the iPhone 8. The major downside to the Apple Arcade version of The Gardens Between is that it is only available on iPhone and iPad. Horizon Chase 2 is a next-gen version of the original arcade racing game. The game is now full 3D, and the art style takes inspiration from vintage racing posters. The game has a dynamic climate system and highly detailed original cars, and it's all powered by Unreal Engine 4. It's hard to deny the game does look pretty beautiful, while still adhering to its classic 90s signature gameplay from the original. The game runs at about 600 to 800p on modern iPhones and a little over 1080p on modern iPads. It also runs at a solid 60 FPS on mobile devices and over 60 FPS on Mac. It's also worth noting the game has full keyboard support on iPad. Samurai Jack is an excellent arcade 3D action and platforming game. It's probably one of the most underrated games on Apple Arcade. It reminds me of classic 3D action games from the PS3 and Xbox 360 era. It's also one of the few games on the service or mobile with controller rumble support. Keep in mind, I think the game has been removed from sale on other storefronts, and it might do the same on arcade in the future. Hopefully not. The game runs at high graphics quality and almost native resolution on devices with an A14 chip or later. M-Series iPad Pros also play the game at 120 FPS, which is a real treat. On Mac, you can choose a manual resolution and more advanced graphical options. Hot Lava was one of the first games released on Apple Arcade. On Mac, this 3D platformer looks great, especially due to the fact that you have access to custom graphics options. The game has good quality textures and shadow quality. The lava looks especially good. While the game looks visually impressive on Mac, it's definitely limited on iOS. There is no anti-aliasing on mobile, and it runs at 30 FPS and lower video settings. The game hasn't been updated in quite a while, but it would be nice if Clay consider improving the mobile version to run at higher settings on new devices. Strangely, Apple TV 4K models run the game at 1080p and 60 FPS. It plays great on those machines. Beyond Blue takes place in the ocean, and because of this, it features some highly detailed environments and marine life. In fact, the game is inspired by Blue Planet 2 by BBC and features scenes from that documentary. Cool. The overall environments feel very alive, with species swimming together just like in real life. Strangely, the game plays best on mobile and Apple TV. The game is capped at 30 FPS, but visually it looks fine on mobile. The Mac version is not great, as it runs at a very low resolution in-game and you can't alter any of the video settings. It's very annoying. You know Hello Games, the people behind No Man's Sky? Well, a few years ago, they brought The Last Campfire to Apple Arcade. It's one of the best indie adventure games I've ever played. Its art style is also incredibly beautiful, and it's definitely up there with the quality of a first-party Nintendo game, visually, and even gameplay-wise. There are so many times when I'm playing that I just stop and marvel at the backdrops. The game also runs at 60 FPS on devices with an A12 Bionic chip or later, or if you have an iPad Pro, it runs at 120 FPS. On iPad, the game also has full keyboard support, which is a great addition. From the creators of the Monument Valley series, Alba is a great open-world adventure game featuring an extremely cheerful visual style. In 2021, the game received an Apple Design Award for social impact. Apple said, "This game demonstrates the positivity that comes from respecting the environment while telling a story about family, community, activism, and kindness." The game was recently updated to support 60 FPS on an iPhone 15 Pro or later, or an M series iPad or later, and Apple TV 4K models. Farming Simulator 20 visually isn't on par with the PC or console version of Farming Simulator, and it's quite old now, but it's still definitely worth being on this list. On mobile, you can play up to very high graphics, and this makes the game look pretty decent, especially on new devices. While the game is capped at 30 FPS on everything, it's not really a big issue for this type of game. Please note, Farming Simulator 20 is only available on iPhone and iPad. Sonic Dream Team is an excellent 3D platformer on Apple Arcade. I'd actually argue that it's one of the best 3D platformers released in the last 5 years. Anyway, the game is powered by Unity, and most of the shaders were created using Unity's shader graphic in the Universal Rendering Pipeline. Unity is very well optimized for Apple devices, so the game runs great on everything. It also supports custom graphics and 60 FPS all the way back to the iPhone XR. I think that's pretty impressive. Don't really like this game, Ed Twister. The gameplay loop for me is really annoying. It's more annoying than it is fun, but I thought it was worth mentioning as it features, decent visuals. The game runs at about 600 to 800p on new iPhones and native resolution on new iPads. It also targets 60 FPS on devices with an A14 Bionic chip or later. Little Orpheus is a 2.5D adventure game by Sumo Digital. The game uses a Technicolor aesthetic and a CRT monitor effect in some areas. The game is vibrant and the colors are saturated in all scenes. The game runs at 1080p on modern iPhone, iPad, and Apple TVs, and 30 FPS. The game is probably best experienced on a Mac, as you can run over 60 FPS on high refresh rate monitors. Spy Adventure Spyder is brought to you by Sumo Digital. Back in 2020, it was a big task for Sumo Digital to get this game running on mobile. The Spyder alone proved to be difficult. It contains 256 bones. Each gadget inside the Spyder is comprised of at least 2 skeletal mesh components, and all the legs and body has to interact when moving around the environment. The Spyder's antenna isn't just for show either. It is there to respond to changes in orientation. The iPhone and iPad port desperately needs to be updated with higher resolution support. The game has no business only running at 834p on my M4 iPad Pro or 600p on my iPhone 16 Pro. Really? A Lego game? Yes. Lego Builder's Journey renders lifelike Lego dioramas in real time. Each scene from starting the game is simply gorgeous, and the story here is something special. One thing missing from the Apple Arcade version is ray tracing. This was a massive feature on PC and console. It would be cool to see if the developer could put it to the test on the latest Apple devices with hardware accelerated ray tracing support. So what do you think of this updated list of Apple Arcade games with the best graphics? Are you impressed or disappointed? Let me know in the comments. Apple Arcade definitely doesn't have, any next-gen graphics or whatever, but all the games on this list offer, in my opinion, really beautiful worlds and some do push Apple mobile GPU hardware somewhat. Anyway, my name is Stewie, and thanks for watching.